Where do your favorite presidents rank on my presidential tier list? Happy President's Day, everybody, and welcome to Republican Talks. I'm your host, Kenneth Glenn, and today I'm doing a president tier list. I've been wanting to make a video like this for a very long time, and I'm glad I've waited till now to make this video because I feel like my knowledge on the presidents has increased tremendously. I've done a lot of research in the last weeks coming up to President's Day so I could make this video. So in this video, I'm going to be ranking these presidents on my tier list. For you that don't know, a tier list is a list in which you rank presidents based on a certain category, whether. So here I have S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and F tier. The S tier is the best tier. It's called best of the best. A tier is the great tier. B tier is good. C is effective. D is harmful. And F is like, who voted for this guy? Like, seriously, like, who voted for some of these guys? So that's how I'll be ranking the presidents. So I'm going to be ranking these presidents in chronological order. And I'm not doing every president. I'm only doing like the 23 or so most popular ones that everyone knows. So we're going to start off with George Washington. Now, George Washington is great. And as you know, he goes right into the S tier. I mean, he founded the country itself. He fought the Revolutionary War barefoot in the winter, which is absolutely crazy. He was very selfless in office, and he cared more about the common good. He was committed to the common good of the country more than he was committed to his political affiliation, and I think that's really great, and that's something that we should celebrate. So for that, George Washington will go in the S tier. Next president on the list is the second president, John Adams. Now, he is not great. He is not that good of a president. He did the Alien Sedation Act, which basically made it so not only can he silence you if you were saying things that he disagreed with, like conspiracy theories and stuff like that, but not only that, but he also signed that law to deport immigrants that were affiliated with his opposite party. And I think that was it's not a good thing for presidents to be doing. I feel like that's an abuse of power. He also increased military spending, which is good, which strengthened our military a lot during that time. But overall, I think he was pretty terrible. So I will put him into the C tier. Thomas Jefferson. Now, he supported the Boston Tea Party. He was all about state rights. He wanted to limit government, and he wanted to give more power to the states. He really, he just wanted every state to be its own country, have its own set of laws, and operate on its own basis, which is great. He was anti-slave. Obviously, the Louisiana Purchase was done underneath him as well. And he also cut direct taxes, which is really good. So for that, I'll have to put him in the A tier. The reason why I'm putting him in the A tier, not the S tier, is that his second term was not as good as his first term. So that's what will dock him points there. So still a pretty good president, A tier. Now here is where we get to a super controversial figure that most people don't like. It's very split on whether or not you like this guy. It's Andrew Jackson. I think Andrew Jackson is one of the best presidents we've ever had. Okay, he was a great leader. He was a war hero. He had a duel where he got shot in the heart, and he shot the guy back and won the duel, which is absolutely nuts to me. Okay, he was really good with reform too. He made reform for hospitals, schools, and prisons. The treaties that he signed were great. His foreign affairs are just super underappreciated, by the way. It's ridiculous how underappreciated his foreign affairs were. The Asian treaties that he signed back then were great. And everyone just likes to bring up the Trail of Tears as if he's the only person that was involved in that. It's like, no, Georgia decided not to follow the federal law and kind of did it behind their back, which is annoying. And everyone doesn't understand. No one understands that back then we didn't have FaceTime and Instagram. You couldn't just see what people were doing at all times. Like, they got messages shipped to them, and it took a month to get there. So it's not like you could just instantly get information. So a lot of the information that he wasn't getting the right information, basically, is what I'm saying. So I think he's a great president. Oh, severely underrated. He goes in the S tier. This is probably going to be my most controversial part of this whole video. Next, we're going to be ranking Abraham Lincoln. And to be honest with you, Abraham Lincoln is not the greatest president. Everyone thinks that he was just this great hero who fought in the Civil War and freed the slaves. But that's not true. He cut funding to banks, and a lot of small banks actually got shut down because of him. He suspended the Constitution, which is not great. And he also only freed slaves in areas that supported the Confederacy and not the Union. So basically, he's like, you can have slaves, but we can't. It's fine if we do it. It's based if we do it. But so for that, I think Abraham Lincoln has to go either B or C tier. Also, the 13th Amendment wasn't signed until after his death. So, I think he's more liked because he had died. He was assassinated. So I think that's what gives him the boost for a lot of people. But if you really look in the history, it's not that great. So I think I'll just put Lincoln in the B tier, I think. And we'll go from there. B tier. Here's where we get to a really cool president I really like, who's really underappreciated. I think it's Ulysses Grant. He is amazing. I love him. I love how brutal and vicious he was towards the Confederates after the war. He did not let anything they did slide. He was very about justice. He loved to get justice. And for that, he basically made it so like Confederates couldn't vote anymore, which is super based. And he didn't want to rebuild the South. Like Andrew Johnson before him, he's like, oh yeah, let's rebuild the South and let's forgive them. And then Grant comes in, he's like, no, screw these guys, which is great. Also, his first and second enforcement acts were amazing too. The problem that taints Grant's overall view, or not view, but people's view on Grant is the Congress. Congress did not want to work with him that much. So he was not able to get as much done as he possibly could have. But with what he did get done, I think he also belongs in the A tier. Here's where we get to one of the most famous presidents of all time, Theodore Roosevelt. He was great. Antitrust. He helped the industrial legislations, the Department of Labor, Forests, Bureau of Chemicals. He did a lot of that stuff. However, he also was super anti-big businesses, which tanked their stock market and kind of screwed up our stock market for a little bit. So for that, I think I could put him in the A tier. He's worth A tier, but he's definitely not S tier like a lot of people think. Here's another pretty easy president to rank. It's Calvin Coolidge. Now, he was super anti-big government. He wanted government to be really small. He also believed that the presidency should not take up a big part of your life. Being a president should be more of a duty to your people, more than it's a full-time job that should take up your time. He's a very people person, which is great, which you don't see a lot of presidents do anymore. He's also very pro. He wanted to unite countries together and make peace with different countries, which is also pretty good, especially at the time when he was president, which was after World War I. Now, I'm not going to put him in the S tier, even though he has a resume to speak for it, because he was also president during an easy time for you to be a president. Like right around the 1920s, he had it pretty easy. There wasn't a lot of issues going on at the time. So he never really got to he never really got to show his skills off if he had to deal with a stressful situation like that. So he'll get A tier for now. Herbert Hoover, he's our next president on our list. He is pretty easy to rank as well. He's probably one of our worst presidents of all time. The stock market crashed when he was in office, and he's trying to fix it, right? And everything that he proposed to help fix it ended up ruining the stock market even more and made the depression even worse, which is why he gets F tier. Here's a president that's very controversial, FDR. A lot of people really like him, and a lot of people think that he was a great president solely because he was voted for multiple times. He's the president that's been into office the longest. He was voted in 3 times, which is the only time it's ever happened. And people think that he was great because of that, but he's not. He actually prolonged the Great Depression. He failed to execute rulings of the other branches, and he overstepped his constitutional boundaries a lot of times, and he also stacked the courts. So basically every single thing that you could do as a president that's bad, he did. So he gets the F tier. The next president on the list is Truman. Now, Truman was a pro-civil rights activist. He was against racism. He wanted to adopt the British health system, and he's also responsible for nuking Japan. Now, being against racism is great. It's good. However, the other things that he did were not that great. So I'm kind of stuck whether or not I want to put him in the D tier or C tier. I don't think he was necessarily bad, per se, but also the whole nuking Japan thing is just huge. So I think we'll just put him in the C tier, just to be safe. I think that C tier is a good ranking for him. Now we're going to rank Eisenhower. Eisenhower is a great political figure, and he's super significant in the realm of American history. He helped so much during World War II, which is amazing. And so he's a World War II hero. He was anti-communist. He also sent the army at a race riot, or at a riot in general. I'm not sure what the riot was about, but there's a riot, and he wasn't afraid to deploy his military to stop it. He wasn't afraid to use lethal force on his own people, which is necessary sometimes. You need presidents who are willing to do that, not willing to just cater to its people, but to actually enforce the law that are bestowed upon them. So for that, he was super paranoid, though. My problem with him is that he was like way too paranoid, which being in the war probably made that a lot more predominant. But overall, I think he's great. I think he goes into the B tier. I think it's solid B tier president. JFK, he's a great president. He did a lot of good things. He was super base too. He's probably one of the most base presidents. He did not care. He said whatever he wanted to. He was so base, in fact, that they assassinated him. But no, he was against Israel, the whole nuke thing in Israel. He didn't want them manufacturing nukes because he didn't trust them to properly alert them and update them on what they were doing. And he's like, nah, we can't trust these guys. We can't just blindly trust them with nuclear weapons because of Russia. Like, that could be a very bad thing, which was very controversial at the time. He's also for the golden standard, which is great. So, one more thing I completely forgot. The Cuban Missile Crisis. How he handled the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't think there's another president in human history that could have handled the Cuban crisis the way that he handled the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm split between whether or not I want to put him in the A tier or the B tier. I think I'll just put him in B tier since he couldn't do a ton while he was in office because he was assassinated. But he also didn't do enough in the time that he was in to be an A tier. So I think he'll go in the B tier. On our list is Lyndon B. Johnson, Kennedy's vice president. Kennedy's vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, he was not super great in office, in my opinion. He did not help at all with the Vietnam War. The welfare state was terrible. He was pro-civil rights, which, most presidents were. Let's be real. And his Vietnam War strategies were just horrible. He was not very smart when it came to that. So for that, I think he can just go in the D tier. He wasn't super harmful, so I can't put him in the F tier. He wasn't extremely harmful, but he wasn't really good either. So I think D tier works for him. Now here's probably the most controversial pick on my list besides the Abraham Lincoln pick, Nixon. I really like Richard Nixon. I think a lot of things that he did were great. And most people bring up just the Watergate scandal. Oh, but what about Watergate? I'm a person that doesn't believe that Watergate actually happened. There's a lot of evidence showing that it didn't happen, and the evidence adds up pretty well. There's a book on it called The Watergate Scam, and if you're interested, I recommend you guys check that book out. It's really good. But Nixon signed a lot of great laws into play. The environmental acts, the Marine Animal Acts, the Endangered Animals Act, Title IX. He desegregated schools. He enforced that schools did it peacefully too, which is really good. And Kent State happened under his administration, which he's not really responsible for, but he definitely was in support of the Kent State incident, which is pretty base as well. Because, I mean, they were told not to protest that day because of the riot. And then they showed up anyway. And then they got shot. And they were like, oh, we didn't think you would actually do it. And then he called them bummed, which is hilarious, in my opinion. He knew that there was also commies in the government, and he kept saying, like, I know they're commies here. And then there ended up being like a few thousand there's like a few thousand in the government, which is great. That he predicted that, which is pretty funny. The only thing I can really say against Nixon is having like help assisting Pinochet. If you know what I'm talking about, the president of Chile there. He assisted him to get to power. But in my defense of that is he also could not have realistically predicted that Pinochet would have done that. So, you know, I think Nixon's overall great. He's very smart, had a lot of good ideas. He signed a lot of acts into play. He really got a lot of balls rolling. And he stopped the Vietnam War. He ended the Vietnam War, which is huge. So, Nixon, my opinion, S tier, great president. Jimmy Carter. Now, Jimmy Carter was a weak leader. He caused the recession to happen, which was the worst since the Great Depression. And how he handled the hostages was terrible, how he did that. He reminds me of Neville Chamberlain in a way, how much of a weak leader he was. And the whole don't turn up your heat, put on a coat thing, such a lame. Like I just there's nothing good about Carter. He also deserves an F tier spot. Now Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was great. He was against welfare, which is good because I think welfare is trash, and I think that I don't like any government assistance personally. I think that we should just be thrown to the wolves and just you gotta do your own thing, man. That's how I think life should be. I don't think there should be a lot of assistant programs and stuff like that. I don't really like it. I'm fine with charities helping out, but I don't think programs should be government led. It shouldn't be led by governments. It should be led by people who are willing to help. Destroyed commies and destroyed communism altogether. And he really warned us about the evils and how scary communism really is. He was a very funny president too. But I think he really made America aware of how serious communism is as an issue. And if you want more information on how bad communism is, you should read Donald Trump Jr.'s book, Triggered. It's a really good book. He talks about his experiences with communism because his grandparents lived in Czechoslovakia at the time. That's what it used to be called. And it was super communist, and he wrote about it in his book, which is It's really good. You should check it out. Anyway, I feel like he fixed the economy as well. A lot of people will argue that he ruined the middle class. I think the middle class ruined the middle class more than anything because they'd rather go on strike and complain instead of going to work. Like, just go to work. I also like how Ronald Reagan stood his ground with the federal strikes. So it was against the law to go on strike if you worked for the government. And they went on strike anyway. And Ronald Reagan's like, hey, by the way, if you strike, if you're going on strike, you're going to lose your job. And then they went on strike anyways, and then they lost their job. So I like how Reagan stood his ground with that. So he fixed the economy. He made it better. For that, he goes in the A tier. Now we get to talk about a really recent president, Obama. Now, Obama was really bad as well. He funded terrorists. The Obamacare Act, Obamacare was really bad. The prenups and deductibles were through the roof. The whole stock market crashing, and they took money from people who had 401ks, and a lot of people ended up getting screwed over because of that. A lot of people had like really built up 401ks, and then all of a sudden it all gets lost because of the whole crisis there. Also, the Yemen attacks were just so bad. The 23 gun executive actions is not good, in my opinion, as well. Also, he's responsible for putting kids in cages, which a lot of people like to point at Trump and be like, oh, he put kids in cages. But no, it was actually Obama that did that. So, overall, Obama's trash, F tier. Bottom, F tier. Not even... him being against Benghazi does not warrant him to be higher than F. Now, we get to talk about one of the best presidents of all time, Donald Trump. Okay, he had the best economy. The job markets were great. He created so many jobs. He had great foreign affairs. Okay, his foreign affairs are so great. Like if this was the world, right? This is him. Like he literally had his thumb on the whole world. That's like how much control he had over everybody. He was like, he would tell terrorists like, don't attack people anymore, and then they would listen. And then he would tell Russia like, hey, don't attack Ukraine, and then they would listen. Trump's also the only president in 71 years that did not start a war while getting into office. He shrunk the national debt. He didn't even take a penny from I think he took literally a penny from office when he was president, which is just crazy to me that he didn't even want to get paid to be president. And he also signed the Right to Try Act, which was great, which helps people who have terminal illnesses to get experimental treatment that could potentially work without going through the FDA guidelines, which is really awesome. So overall S tier. The only thing I could really say against Trump is the whole bump stock issue. But if you want to say that, he also consulted the FDA or the NRA about that. He worked with the NRA, and the NRA even agreed that that would be a good thing to do. So he didn't even ban bump stocks on his own fruition. He asked the NRA like if he should have done it, and he did. Like, and they said, yeah, that'd be fine. So anything you can say against Trump, you can't say anything against him. He's just the best president ever. He's awesome. So for that, S tier for sure. And now we get to our current president, Joe Biden. Now, it's hard to rank him because he is not yet done with his term, but I think that I have a good spot for him. You know, vote for this guy. So, where do I even start? The pullout of Afghanistan was trash. He forced soldiers to sleep in a parking lot after they guarded his inauguration speech. He supported the torturing of Christians until they no longer accept Christ as the Lord and Savior in China because of cultural differences. What else did he do? Oh yeah, cocaine in the White House. He gave a ton of money to Ukraine for whatever reason, even though they're doing really fine. He set up the bioweapon labs in their country that caused the war to start to begin with. And we didn't know about those bioweapon labs in Ukraine until after Russia invaded, which is just nuts. So, yeah, I can't even. Oh, yeah, and he likes to sniff kids. Like, what the heck? Who voted for this guy? Yeah, Biden gets F tier. And put him at the worst president spot on the F tier. He is so awful. Such a bad president. So, yeah, that F tier. All right, so that's been my list. Tell me where I got it right. Tell me where I got it wrong. And you can even let me know how you would have ranked it if you want in the comments down below. I hope you have a great President's Day, everybody. And I'll talk to you guys later. See ya. Have a good day.